Hey y'all, welcome to this video. Let's talk about effective HP, or effective hit points, effective health, and let's model this with some scenarios that you'd encounter in the actual game. So we're talking about Diablo 4. In Diablo 4, you can get items that are going to boost your damage. You can also get items that are going to reduce the damage that you take. Damage reduction. And what we're going to look at here is focusing on what can often be an underrated kind of thing that players invest in, but that can actually significantly increase your effective health pool or your effective hit points and make you survive longer when you're fighting enemies. And it's not something that's necessarily obvious, because the obvious ways to increase your health is to get an item that increases your health, or to socket your items with something that increases your total health percentage. But as we'll see here, damage reduction accomplishes the same end goal, which is you can take more hits from enemies and not die. And sometimes a relatively insignificant investment from the items available for damage reduction could be substantially better than what you would try to scrape together in terms of increasing your literal hit points. So we see a couple different columns here in this little table that I made. We have the total HP, so this is going to be kind of demonstrating our character. Not kind of. This is literally demonstrating our character's health in this this mock-up scenario. So we're going to have 100 health in each of these scenarios. The enemies are going to be dealing 100 damage in each of these scenarios, and then we're going to have up to 3 different items that have damage reduction on them, or passives, any kind of source of damage reduction. And we're just modeling 3 possibilities here, or 3 possible places you could have damage reduction, just to illustrate the concept. We also have the total damage reduction percentage. We'll explain that in a bit. And then hits until you die, hits until dead. So this is how many hits you could take from an enemy with any given row representing the scenario that's playing out. So then finally, effective HP is just an indication of if all other things, if you had no damage reduction in the picture, how much health would you need to have sustained the same amount of damage, or to have the same level of survivability? Okay, so going through the first scenario, we're going to have 0, 0, 0. That's no damage reduction at all. We've got someone who's playing, let's say like a glass cannon kind of build. You've gone all in on DPS, you have no damage reduction. So you have 100 health, enemy does 100 damage. How many hits does it take until you're dead? And it takes 1 hit. 1 and you're done. So then we go down to row 2. So in this scenario, you picked up a really nice skill that's giving you 50% damage reduction. That's a crazy damage reduction for one source, but just to illustrate the point, this is going to give us 50% total damage reduction. Very simple translation there. And this now means that you can take 2 hits until you die, because the enemy damage is going to go from 100 down to 50. You still have 100 health, so that means you have to be hit twice to die. All right, now to play out the third scenario, you have 2 sources of damage reduction. And to illustrate the concept, we're going to say it's the exact same amount of damage reduction as you had before, 50% and then another 50%. This does not mean you have 100% damage reduction. These damage reduction sources, as many as you could have, 1 of these, you could have none of these, you could have 10 of these. You're never going to have 100% damage reduction, adding up from all of your different sources of damage reduction, because these are multiplicative. And what that means is your first source, that's going to be whatever the nominal value is. You get that damage reduction. But when you have 2 sources of damage reduction, you don't add these together. This is not additive, this is multiplicative. And what that means is that 50% of 50% is 25%. So if you had already reduced your damage by 50%, now when you reduce the damage left over by 50%, this would be the same as saying your enemy was going to do 100 damage to you. You reduced that by 50. There's 50 damage left the enemy is going to do to you. That's going to be further reduced by 50. So the very first damage reduction check here reduced your damage by 50 hit points. Then you got another 50% damage reduction on the remaining incoming damage. And instead of taking that full remaining 50 damage, that gets cut in half. Now you're taking 25 damage. Okay, so what does this mean? If an enemy who's supposed to do 100 damage is now doing just 25 damage to you per hit because you have two sources of damage reduction for 50%, that's going to mean you're taking 4 hits before you die. And we can start to see how this damage reduction is actually really, really effective for increasing your effective HP. You now have the amount or the equivalent of if you had increased your health by 4 times. So 400% of your original effective HP. Now that's really good. Granted, it's really hard to find items where you have 50% damage reduction, but now just to take this to the extreme, let's say you have 3 sources of this 50% damage reduction. So now you were already, after having 2 sources of 50% damage reduction, you were all the way down to taking 25% of the original damage. Now if you reduce that by another 50%, you're taking like 12.5% of that original damage. So you could now take 8 hits before you die. So this is just insane boost to survivability, especially compared to if you're just trying to stack actual bonuses to your health and socket gems that are increasing your health by 5% or something like that. Don't underrate the value of these damage reduction sources. It could be a really good way in combination with trying to boost your damage with various items. If you find a really good damage reduction opportunity, a lot of times it's worth taking. At least just try it out. Because something I think that you're going to encounter is doing a lot of damage is great, but if you can't take damage, then you're going to end up spending a lot of time running away from enemies and not doing any damage. So your effective DPS is going to be kind of correlated with your effective HP, I think. If you focus too much on just doing damage, you're never going to get a chance to do that damage because you're always going to be getting killed way too quickly and running away from the fight like Sir Robin. All right, so then finally a little more realistic scenario to just cap this thing off. This is having 3 sources of 25% damage reduction. This is really attainable. Pretty attainable, at least for like a sorceress in Diablo 4. Teleport gives you 30% damage reduction for 5 seconds. You can have a passive that gives you 20% damage reduction. You have an item, a legendary aspect that's going to be giving you 25% damage reduction when you use a basic skill. So this is really realistic, and in fact, you could have a lot more of these, stacked up. But even just having 3 sources of this 25% damage reduction ends up getting you a total damage reduction of almost 58%, which means it's going to take 3 hits to kill you, and you end up with 237% of your original HP as effective HP. So this is pretty effective. This is something that I didn't understand very well when I first started playing Diablo games. So if you are new to the franchise, consider this. You're gonna have this greedy feeling that you're gonna always want to just increase your damage, but don't sleep on damage reduction, because the longer you stay alive, the more damage you have an opportunity to deal to the monsters. So hopefully this has been helpful to somebody out there, and I'll be seeing you in the game.